The science skills in Starfield are sick, and they unlock more content in the game than any tree, even more so than tech, I'd say. Unfortunately, there are some stinky little skills that hold the tree back from being perfect, and it really sheds light on just how basic and uninspiring a good chunk of the skills are in this game. I've been back in the lab testing all 16 of the science skills, and the results are in. Knowledge is power, so please share your thoughts in the comments on what I missed or might have got wrong. Let's dig in. Our first skill today is Astrodynamics. This is a generally useful skill that simplifies travel between systems by extending your jump range and decreasing your fuel consumption. While it's by no means essential, it can be useful earlier on if you don't have the credits to invest into grav drives or fuel upgrades on your ship that may also require Starship Design to access. Being realistic though, it's not that expensive to get some solid upgrades outfitted on any ship. The main benefit of increasing your jump range is that it has a dramatic effect on how your ship performs jumps to distant systems. Without hitting certain minimums for jump range, you simply can't reach certain systems at all, or use them as intermediate jump points to hit further target destinations. You can see this comparison of how much longer the route is when I use a ship that has a lower jump range, which is fine so long as you have enough fuel to make it feasible. This is very much a nice to have skill that I would only really recommend upgrading when you find space travel becoming clunky and you're forced to make additional pit stops along the way to your destination. If you have the credits to upgrade your ship directly, that's a better option than shelling out a skill point here. If you're going to put some points in though, I'd say ranks 1 and 3 are the most valuable, as they both have grab jump distance modifiers, which helps optimize jump routes, which indirectly decreases fuel requirements. A final way to combat this is by having Sarah Morgan or any other crew member with Astrodynamics on your ship, though they only decrease fuel costs and do not increase jump distances. Overall, it's a skill that does have practical uses, but you can easily make do without it. I'd still say it's a C tier skill that you should only invest in if you're really feeling the strain of space travel and you don't have the credits to upgrade your ship. Next up is Geology, which is a pretty trash skill in all honesty, as manually gathering inorganic resources is horribly inefficient compared to just spending a few thousand credits at just about any vendor in exchange for hundreds of resources when starting out. Ranking up this skill gives about a 50% chance to receive twice as many resources per harvest while out exploring. Each rank increases the rarity of resources that benefit from this skill, with the final rank making it possible to get additional rare resources. Now, this is pretty vague, but after testing around 200 rock samples, it seems to be around a 10% chance to receive a single additional rare resource, which is terrible. These are the only benefits from the skill, and unless you're doing some fully self-sufficient no shops playthrough, then don't waste a single point in this skill. You can also just set up outposts to extract all the resources you need for a particular project, even the unique ones. Once you get those set up, you may as well have an unlimited supply of whatever you need. This skill is probably one of the most well-warranted F rankings in the game. Medicine is not a useless skill, but it's certainly far from good. Each rank of medicine increases the effectiveness of meds and the rate at which they heal by 10%, with the final rank providing 20% and the chance to cure an affliction, so you get a bit more value out of that fourth point. Based on my test, you have around a 10% chance to cure an affliction, and it can only cure one affliction even if you have multiple. Personally, I think the skill is only worth investing in if you actively struggle in combat and are constantly popping med packs to the point where you're entirely running out of them and you need to resupply them at vendors. If you're on a higher difficulty, there's certainly a better case for this, but even so, you're actually better off just putting the points into wellness first, since med items heal off % max HP, so the increase in healing from a med pack is identical up to rank 3 of wellness or medicine. There's a tiny difference at rank 4 that favors medicine, but you wouldn't have the higher HP pool that wellness provides you, which I would say is objectively more useful to prevent getting one-shot by stronger foes. In any case, you're probably better off putting points into more offensive than defensive skills, if you even need to bother investing in either. I'd rank this a D, with the rank 4 perk maybe warranting a C, as it's slightly more useful. Research methods is an interesting one that I could see people having mixed opinions on. With each rank, you not only decrease the cost of research projects by 10, 20, then 40, and finally 60% from ranks 1 to 4, but you also permanently decrease the cost to craft items by the same amount. Rank 4 comes with the additional bonus of making sudden developments twice as common, and let me tell you, you really feel this one. There are cases where I've tried to crank through a bunch of research projects and end up only having to supply about half of the unique ingredients, which is super convenient. Now, the argument for this not being a great skill is that you could just do a few vendor runs and rack up most of the research materials you'd ever need, but if you're doing any serious crafting, this translates to massive time savings, not having to seek out specific resources. It's also great for speeding up more complex outpost or XP credit farming, as the more advanced craftables do decrease in cost. If you're just doing an adaptive frame build, however, this would be irrelevant, as it already has a base cost of 1 aluminum aluminum, and 1 iron, so it would never decrease lower than that, obviously. An important note is that this does not reduce the cost to craft outpost modules in the Outpost Builder tab, but it does work for all other crafting like meds, weapons, etc. Overall, it's a solid skill that removes a lot of headache out of researching and is exceptionally good for anyone who crafts a lot. I think this is an A tier skill that can skew 1 point up or 2 points down depending on if you value the convenience this provides. Our last novice skill is surveying, and this one is another highly preference-based convenience skill geared toward those who are interested in exploration. Without any upgrades, your scanner has a pathetic range of 10 meters, which can make surveying a real chore as you pretty much have to have your face in a bush for it to register the scan without any investment. Rank 1 is easily the best investment as you double your scan range from 10 to 20 meters, and this will honestly probably be more than enough for 90% of players. Further ranks continue to increase the scan distance by 10 meters each up to 50 meters, and it does speed up full surveys of planets, but not by an amount that I'd say justifies the full 4 points of investment, unless you're really into fully surveying many planets. You also get scaling zoom levels with ranks, but it doesn't change the physical distance you actually have to be from a scannable entity to register the scan, so I find it pretty useless unless you're trying to get a closer look at some moons. I'd say this is a B tier skill that's very convenient for explorers, but for the general player who only does the odd full planet survey, a single point is going to be more than enough. Subscribe or you shall suffer the eternal gaze of the citizens of the settled systems, and no amount of mods will break it. Or do it because you want more research-based Starfield content. Similar to surveying, botany is another skill that explorers will benefit tremendously from, along with anyone interested in diving into outpost building. Normally it takes 8 scans of a plant to fully scan it, but each rank of botany drops that number down by 1, with only 4 scans being required at rank 4. This effectively makes exploration twice as fast, and in all honesty, probably even more than that, as I've noticed you'll have instances on planets where you just can't seem to find more than a couple of each plant for long stretches of exploration. You receive identical benefits as you would from geology, where you have a chance to receive additional resources from each harvest, but that's nothing special. Rank 1 is where all the actual important benefits are. You gain additional important info about each plant, including the resources you need to cultivate it at an outpost, and whether that plant is a valid candidate for growing to begin with. Typically, it's only the small to medium-sized plants as they need to fit in the actual greenhouse, and the large plant models just wouldn't fit there. So I'd say 1 point in botany is a must for players with any interest at all in outposts, and that dedicated explorers shouldn't hesitate to drop the full 4 points and would likely consider this an S tier skill. If you have no interest in wandering around planets scanning plants for hours, you'd probably consider this a D tier skill, but I would still consider the 1 point at least for the outpost aspect. I'm going to skip ahead to zoology here, as this is almost a carbon copy of botany, except it's for creatures instead of plants. Same sort of deal where progressive ranks give you more resources of higher qualities, and scan requirements to complete a scan scales down from 8 to 4. This scan requirement decrease is actually so important for creature scanning for explorers, because if you've tried to fully survey more than a few planets, you've probably spent a stupid amount of time trying to find some of these sneaky little shits. For some reason, they have significantly lower spawn rates than the larger creatures, and even re-landing on a planet doesn't guarantee you'll find some. In some cases, even the larger creatures suffer from this depending on the planet, so only having to find 4 of each is a giant plus if you're keen on surveying. Rank 1 again is the star of the show here, where you unlock the ability to create animal husbandry facilities at outposts to produce animal resources. You also supposedly can harvest resources from creatures without harming them, but I've tried walking up to creatures to harvest, even with them being stunned with EM weapons, and that never did anything, so either I've done something wrong here, or it really was just referring to outpost farming them. Finally, you have the same benefit from the scans to see if the creature you've scanned is eligible for resource production in your outpost, with most violent creatures and those little elusive assholes being excluded from that list. Rankings for zoology are identical to botany. Put 1 point in for the outpost unlock, and it's an S tier for explorers, and a waste of points for those of you who dread planet wandering. If you haven't given exploration a fair shake, I'd recommend trying it again, honestly. I've had some good fun just roaming around some of the more vibrant, life-filled planets. Scanning is an alright skill that has value to those interested in piracy as well as exploration. Each rank allows you to detect 1 tier higher of resources on planet surfaces while scanning, but this only means from a surface scan perspective. You can still always find any resources listed on the planet summary so long as you're in an eligible area to find it, so scanning is not a hard requirement. It simply helps you zero in on resources more effectively. You can see the difference in the map visualization with each progressive rank on screen here. On the piracy side of things, each rank gives you a little more information about the ships around you while in space, starting with just reactor information and total cargo value at rank 1, then crew, hull, and shield information at rank 2. Now, I can't say for certain whether this factors in the captain's hold, where typically you'll find tons of loot on boarded ships, but I want to say that it doesn't. Maybe someone here has experience that can confirm if it is factored in. Let me know if you do know the answer here. Rank 3 gives you the general damage rating of the ship, which is actually extremely relevant for understanding the success potential of a piracy attempt, assuming no other ships are present. You can just use that value and compare it to your own. This is just the summed value of all the weapon systems to give you that damage rating. The fourth and final rank details the actual allocations for their weapon systems, and also allows you to see exactly what that target ship is carrying, so you can decide if it's really worth engaging with them, and whether you have a fair shot at succeeding in a piracy attempt to begin with. This skill definitely has its uses for pirates and explorers, but it's far from revolutionary. However, I'll be kind and say it still warrants a B, as the information it provides can be quite useful in the right situations. So I've seen a few comments floating around saying Spacesuit Design isn't a great skill, but I have to disagree here. There's some fantastic benefits you can get from this skill that definitely makes the points feel worthy of investment. Now, don't get me wrong, it's no weapon engineering, but there are some utility mods for carrying capacity and O2 regen, strong defensive benefits that can be very useful for damage soaking, healing item boosting, and even HP regen, which can save you a huge point investment in the physical tree. Finally, just being able to change the actual boost type of your pack is huge if you find a superior legendary pack with awesome rolls that happens to be a power or basic pack to the significantly better balanced or skip pack. This is at least an A tier skill in my eyes that's just shy of pushing S. I'd recommend waiting to put the points in, however, until you know there are upgrades you're ready to shell out the skill points for. So head over to an equipment modding table first and check. Another fantastic skill on the list is weapon engineering. This skill is no doubt one of the best skills in the game, as it unlocks the absolute best of the best means of improving your weapons in Starfield. From optics to grips and stocks to mags and batteries, you have a wide variety of options at your disposal to customize weapons to your liking, and some combinations are absolutely nuts. The Hornet's Nest Coachman that many of you pointed out in the comments last video is a perfect example. While you can access some basic weapon mods without skill point investment, obviously the best are gated behind the final ranks of the skill, and they're honestly well worth it. I would max this skill out well before putting points into the combat tree any day, as this unlocks mods that can work for literally all weapon types in the game versus many of the combat skills that are for very specific weapons and damage types. Easily an S tier skill across the board, with the similar advice to only spend the skill points once you're ready to drop materials to upgrade your weapons of choice. Another worthwhile consideration is leveling research methods before this and any of the other crafting-based skills to speed up the research projects and drop the crafting costs. I'll be making a video in the near future that covers every weapon mod in depth, so keep your eyes out for that. Astrophysics is yet another excellent skill for explorers, and it's honestly a reasonable pickup for players who enjoy using exploration as a means for leveling versus things like XP farms at Outpost. Rank 1 lets you scan moons around the planet you're currently on, Rank 2 extends this to anything in your current system, Rank 3 for any celestial body within 16 light years, and then finally 30 light years at Rank 4. The distance benefits from 3 and 4 are not especially necessary, as it's usually better to travel to each system at least once if you're interested in the star is my destination achievement, and it also unlocks it as a valid travel route, which makes travel less of a hassle down the road if you do a lot of exploring. The biggest benefit from astrophysics is the % chance of discovering a trait when scanning from space. If you've ever tried to scan a planet with 3 or more traits, you know it's a giant pain in the ass to knock all of them out, as they're so goddamn far from where you land. This 50% chance is a huge time saver, and you get XP directly from your ship anytime you discover a trait from the scan. Also, gas giants you scan always count as a fully completed survey and can award over 200 XP each in many cases, so just 2 ranks in astrophysics can rack you up a significant amount of XP over the course of cleaning through every system and getting all of those gas giants, which you can also sell to Vlad for additional credits. Pushing to rank 4 will also save you hours of on-foot surveying time, not having to find every trait on every planet. Obviously, this is far from the best way to level in the game, but if you plan on exploring most of what the galaxy has to offer, this is just free, efficient XP. So it's definitely an A tier skill that's worth the points if you're going on a 2001 Space Odyssey, but if that's not your space jam, then it's probably not the slam dunk skill you were looking for, and it'll be more of a D tier skill. I really didn't want to call chemistry a bad skill, but once you realize that certain ingredients in chemistry must be purchased from shops or looted, or are exceedingly rare like calamite, it becomes clear that it's next to impossible to sustain a reliable supply of high-quality chems, not even accounting for the fact that a lot of these endgame chems only last for 10 seconds to 5 minutes, which is frankly way too short. Each rank of chemistry provides access to new chems entirely or upgraded variants of existing chems. Rank 4 looks like a pretty cool perk, as it says you'll occasionally craft triple the amount of chems, but just how often does this actually happen? Well, I tried making hundreds of chems with Chemistry Max, and it's an embarrassing 3.3% chance to proc this effect. Was it really too much to ask for Bethesda to make even half of these rank 4 perks in this game at least somewhat rewarding? Like damn, I've tried to see as much good in this game as I possibly can despite being a very cynical person, but it's actually sad how uninspired or flat out useless the majority of skills are in this game. You could have easily made chems you craft last twice as long at rank 2 and become twice as potent at rank 3, and that took all of 30 seconds to think of, and it makes the skill 10 times more compelling for me to invest in. I doubt this would even be difficult to program since we know nutrition basically does exactly that for food, and you could always make crafted chems use a different item ID with an indicator like stolen and contraband items have. Anyways, game design rant over. Do better, Bethesda. There is one funny thing about this rank 4 perk, and that is that it rolls this 1 in 30 chance for every crafting batch you do, not each individual item. So you can make 99 items in one batch, and you'll get 297 of them if the odds are in your favor. Obviously, this technically means nothing in the long run, but it's neat that you could get spooned on one lucky big roll. For now, I'd say chemistry is a C tier skill only because it does unlock some cool chems, but since they're heavily resource limited and don't last a meaningful amount of time either, it's just not worth dumping the points into in my mind. The rank 4 perk is also insulting and some F- tier bullshit that should be changed immediately. Outpost Engineering is pretty much a must-have skill for anyone planning on decking out their outpost, but it's not particularly descriptive in what each rank actually provides. I'll save the proper deep dive on this for a future video, but generally, you have very basic versions of most outpost structures, power generators, and resource production objects at your disposal with zero investment in the skill to start. Each rank provides a combination of more advanced versions of what you already had access to, or a completely new set of objects. For example, at rank 3, you unlock reactors for power generation. While it's completely viable to build an outpost capable of making a solid XP farm with no skill points invested in this skill, you will be missing all of the superior fabricators and resource generators for more complex outpost construction, all the fancy decorations, and a few other features. Rank 4 is obviously a giant benefit as it drops the resource cost of building modules by 50%, but the value of this is diminished as you progress further in outpost construction and have more consistent access to all the necessary building materials from extractors. I considered giving this an S as it does unlock a huge chunk of outpost building content, but I'm going to give it an A simply because there's no true necessity to rank it up past rank 1 in order to have a reasonably positive outpost building experience. Though I would suggest putting in at least the 3 points if you have a medium to high interest in fully exploring the outpost building system. Aneutronic Fusion is probably as simple as it gets for skill explanations. The first 3 ranks provide 1 additional reactor power, and the final rank gives you 2. This is just a very nice to have bonus that certainly wouldn't hurt if you do a lot of ship-based combat. This skill obviously has lower effectiveness the stronger your reactor gets. For example, C-class ships with reactors that push over 40 points only end up getting about a 12.5% buff after 4 points of investment. It's a good skill, but for the total benefit it provides, I'd still say it really only warrants a B if I'm being honest. Considering this is a master skill, I think it should provide twice the amount of power per rank than what it currently offers. Second last on our list is Planetary Habitation. This skill isn't bad per se, but it's definitely a dumb skill that pretends to do more than it actually does. With each rank, you unlock the ability to build outposts on planets with increasingly extreme conditions. The first being actually somewhat relevant as there are quite a few deep freeze and inferno planets, and 3 of the 6 planets with unique resources fall into this category. Rank 2 is for planets with extreme pressure, but there are less than a dozen that fit into this bucket of over 1,000 planets, so that's pretty useless. Rank 3 actually is more useful as toxic and corrosive atmospheres are significantly more prevalent. Finally, Rank 4 covers planets with extreme gravity, which applies to any planet above 2 Gs, which there are also less than a dozen of if you exclude the gas giants, which you obviously can't land on, and none of them are for unique resources, so again, it's completely irrelevant. It seems like they just ran out of ideas here and thought it would make the master tier skill sound more interesting and enticing to put points in, but come on, that is such lazy bullshit. You could have easily tied in something like increased build limits or increase the active build zone you can work with for an outpost. Like, how hard is it to get the slightest bit creative on these? The final benefit from this skill is you get 4 more outposts for each rank, so you can go from your starting outpost max of 6 up to 22 at rank 4. Now, unless you're some planetary conqueror who wants outposts across the galaxy, you're probably never going to hit this limit, and even the most complex endgame outposts don't use more than 15 from what I've seen. Overall, I really don't like this skill because it feels lazily designed, but there are some absolutely necessary components to it where you will have to hit rank 3 in order to access every resource for extracting, so I'll reluctantly give it a B. Rank 4, however, is complete ass, and you should never ever put a point into it unless you have a very compelling reason to go beyond 18 outposts. That rank 4 perk gets the F of shame, which is really tragic for a master skill. As with many of the other science skills, I recommend holding off on the point investment here until you absolutely have to. Our final skill today is special projects, and this is a generally good skill that probably is actually worthy of being a master tier skill. Rank 1 is a requirement for completing the most powerful projects of all the crafting and outpost related skills, while ranks 2, 3, and 4 unlock the ability to craft the necessary components for building those endgame outpost structures and crafting high-rank suit and weapon mods. Now, you can buy many of those in shops as well, but not in nearly as great a quantity as the more common materials, leaving scavenging as your only other method of obtaining them, but that's not sustainable for large-scale outpost building. This is also critical to endgame XP farming as it hinges on crafting unique manufactured components, so this is a must if it's something that you're planning on doing. The final benefit is that outpost extractors have the chance to produce additional resources, but this one is kind of like chemistry, only a tiny bit better. It feels like it's around a 5% buff after testing, which sure, it's something, but it's nothing remarkable. In the grand scheme of things, you're also probably not going to notice this unless you're very diligent and you return to your outpost before your storage containers cap out. But we're going to treat that as a bonus here, as the true perk was the unlocked components that you get. Because this skill does actually provide pretty well all the highest level craftable items in the game, many of which are extremely strong like weapon and suit mods, along with the ability to reliably craft the prerequisite components for these upgrades, I'll be kind and throw special projects into the S tier, as that would only be fitting, and I've been shitting on enough of these skills as is, so God knows Bethesda needs this small win. Despite my nitpicking on a few of these skills and my criticism of the overall lack of creativity in skills in the game in general, the science tree is probably tied as the most essential tree to dump points into aside from the tech tree, as you're entirely gated from accessing content without a significant investment of skill points here. Obviously, it's your prerogative whether it's content you'd like to access, but in most cases, you do get tangible benefits from investing in this tree, with things like suit and weapon mods, and pretty much all significant outpost upgrades being walled behind these skills. In some ways, it almost feels like you're forced to play this tree at the expense of others just to experience the whole game. But honestly, I still think it's my favorite tree as I enjoy exploration, and outposts are a daunting but rewarding system to set up. The general takeaway on this tree is that you can get by without investing the points in many of these skills until your character is actually at a stage where it becomes relevant and feasible to do so. To summarize the tree, Astrodynamics is useful for simplified travel, but a good ship will probably have the same effect. Geology is complete shit. Medicine is okay, but wellness is better. Research methods is convenient and in many ways very good, but is irrelevant if you don't care about supplying the extra resources. Put 1 point into surveying, it helps a lot, and more points for the explorer fans. Botany and zoology should also get 1 point each to unlock the outpost benefits, and max it out if you're doing serious planet exploration. Scanning is alright but not remarkable. Spacesuit design and weapon engineering are gangster, but you can hold the points until you're ready for upgrades. Astrophysics is key for explorers and will save you hours of time, but it's useless otherwise in all honesty. Chemistry is underwhelming and the rank 4 perk is bait. Outpost engineering is critical for outposts obviously, and again, save the points until it's time to use them. Aneutronic Fusion, simple, effective, but less so for ships with powerful reactors. Planetary Habitation is necessary for outpost building, but it's dumb and the rank 4 perk is next to useless unless you have a high gravity fetish or you really want 22 outposts for some reason. Special projects is special, it's worth the points when you're ready for it. And thus concludes the science tree. We've got one more skill tree before we've covered all 82 skills, and then I've got a lot more planned for weapon and spacesuit mods and Starfield mods itself, so make sure you've got those notifications on to catch them as soon as they drop. Thank you to all existing and new patrons, your support is genuinely heartwarming. I've still got a few slots in my discounted tier, so if you're interested in an elevated Mumbler experience with some exclusive perks, make sure to grab one while they're still available. If you haven't watched me and my hundreds of loyal test subjects put all 17 combat skills to the test, make sure to check that one out here next. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.